Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Common Sense Party Podcast. I'm your host, Dottley. Guess Joe Biden just gave his reasoning of to why he left the race. As you see on the cap, it says, "Thank you, Joe. Thank you for your service." So this is the Common Sense Party Podcast. We're going to give a little thank you to Joe Biden for getting us out of the pandemic and making this such a strong economy. But first, I'm your host, Dottley. This is a Common Sense Party Pod. Fixing the mic. Common Sense Party Podcast mission is this on topics that affect the everyday person. Rate, review, follow, subscribe. Tell a friend and tell a friend and tell a friend to rate, review, follow, subscribe. Please give us 5 stars, give us 4 stars, give us 3 stars, give us 2 stars. You can even give us 1 star. You give us just one lonely star, and I'll appreciate that, because if you don't give us any stars, I'll just assume you're doing it properly. I'll be available wherever you get your podcasts. We're available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Samsung Podcasts, Pandora, YouTube Music, formerly Google Podcasts. Tune in, and we're available on Apple. You can contact us at the Common Sense Party Pod at gmail.com. We're available on Instagram, TikTok. You should check out us on TikTok, because we got a bunch of back-to-back, things that are pissing the GOP off, because I'm getting a lot of feedback from them. We're on the Common Sense Party Pod at TikTok. We're on Facebook and Threads. You can also support the podcast via Cash App or Zelle. The information is on the About page of our podcast. Again, the hat says it all. Thank you, Joe. He was one of the best presidents we have, because he turned around. He brought us back from where we were. And so, before we get it started, let's go ahead and let's talk about this, because the polls were 1, 2, 3. Lately, polls have not been correct. So let's see what this poll or this,
I just want to start out with, there was so much conversation with Congressman Pocan about, what's going on in the presidential race. And Tom Bonnier has broken down the one of the most recent big polls. It's Insider Advantage / Fox 5 survey of Atlanta. And he points out that black voters are 29% of the electorate in Georgia in 2000, but they were only 2% of the people who took the poll. So what they do is they take this 2%, which turned out to be 17 people, and multiply their answers by 10, 12, 14, whatever it is, to get up to that 29%, which largely renders polls meaningless. He makes the same point about people under 40, that voters under 40 in Georgia accounted for 1 out of 3 votes, about 33% of the votes in Georgia, but they were only 8% of the respondents. And of course, this is because people are not answering their cell phones, and it's getting harder and harder and harder to get people to take polls. And so what they're doing is they're taking the answers of people who will take a poll, and which probably has unique personality characteristics in and of themselves, and just, multiplying them. And it's nuts. I mean, the point that he's making is that Joe Biden may be way out ahead right now, that the polls, so much of this polling is just like meaningless. And this is what we've been seeing certainly since 2016, where the polls predicted at least a 3-point blowout for Hillary Clinton. The same thing, we saw the same thing in 2018. We saw it in 2020. We saw it last year, or the last election, 2022, with the whole so-called red wave that was, that all the polls were showing, and it never appeared. I think we need to just, take a deep breath here. Again, whether Joe Biden stays as the nominee or not, that's really up to Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. And I'm just making it very clear that I will support whoever the nominee is, including Joe Biden, 100%. Right up to the edge, right up to the end. It's
all right. Again, how can you take 2% of a voting bloc and say that he's behind or is close? The one thing I read is that they took a poll, a national poll of like maybe 700 people. 685 people were white, like 17 were black, and that's how they do their polls. The Democrats panicked, but I will say this. Personally, show is good, but I think the Democrats panicked because of one bad performance. I'll really read this again. I think they panicked because of one performance, and he would have won easily. Because what the rumors were that they were trying to get either Gavin Newsom or the governor of Kentucky to run the ticket. But I'll leave that for another time. But he deserved to run the re-election, because this is what I thought. I said it in the last podcast. When he won the re-election, he would have stepped aside, and Kamala Harris would have been the first female, Asian, Black president in U.S. history. And then in 2028, Gavin Newsom would run, and he would become president. I still say that's going to happen. So it's going to work this way. He's going to win, then Newsom's going to be the next one, or she's going to win, and she's going to win two. She might not win two, because we saw what happened when Barack Obama went back-to-back, and they don't like us. Okay, so, and we're going to set another video about Biden dropping out of the race.
That will be looked upon as an historic day without par.
We have breaking news here. President Biden has announced he will stand down from the race.
Now, there'll be much reported on here on Occupy Democrats and all over social media. But let's start by running down the earliest reactions to today's big news across the spectrum, from politicians and personalities alike. And the biggest ones come from both two-term American presidents. And we're going to show you that one in just a minute. But let's first check out some of the reactions across the social media horn of plenty. First, Elizabeth Warren was quick to post this. Joe Biden's presidency has been transformational. He's accomplished more in the past 4 years to bring back jobs, stand up to big corporations, and build an economy that works for all of us than we have been able to get done in the last 40. He deserves full credit for beating Donald Trump in 2020, and his selfless decision today gives us our best shot at doing it again in 2024. While Donald Trump tried to tear down our democracy to maintain his grip on power, Joe Biden willingly stepped aside in order to protect our democracy. President Biden's selfless action is a profound gift to the people of the United States, and it's on all of us not to waste it. I endorse Kamala Harris for president, and she is a proven fighter who has been a national leader in safeguarding consumers and protecting access to abortion. As a former prosecutor, she can press a forceful case against allowing Donald Trump to regain the White House. We have many talented people in our party, but Vice President Harris is the person who was chosen by the voters to succeed Joe Biden if needed. She can unite our party, take on Donald Trump, and win in November. Well, the internet is lighting up with reactions from all different folks in and out of politics. For example, Mark Hamill tweeted this earlier today at Joe Biden. He has a record of accomplishments unmatched by any president in our lifetime. He restored honesty, dignity, and integrity to the office after 4 years of lies, crime, and scandal and chaos. Thank you for your service, Mr. President. It's now our duty as patriotic Americans to elect the Democrat who will honor and further your legacy. And House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries posted this reaction. President Joe Biden is one of the most accomplished and consequential leaders in American history. In less than one term, he rescued the nation from a once-in-a-century pandemic, brought the economy roaring back from the brink of recession, enacted consequential legislation for everyday Americans, and saved our democracy by defeating the insurrectionist-in-chief. America is a better place today because President Joe Biden has led us with intellect, dignity, and grace, and we are forever thankful. And Senator Bernie Sanders offered this post earlier. Joe Biden has served our country with honor and dignity as the first president ever to walk a picket line with striking workers. He has been the most pro-working class president in modern American history. Thank you, Mr. President, for all that you have done. Bernie Sanders. And Representative Ted Lieu from California, he had this to say earlier. Thrilled, President Biden endorsed the most amazing and historic vice president in history for president, Kamala Harris. 40 years ago, I was the first member of Congress to endorse Harris for president. Vice President Harris will be the Democratic nominee, and she will win in November. And George Conway said this today earlier, Joe Biden is a patriot. He has selflessly served this nation with distinction for half a century and stepped forward to save it in 2020. We Americans again owe him our deepest thanks and respect for putting the country above all else once again. Thank you, Mr. President, said George Conway. But so far, the biggest and heaviest and most important endorsements came from former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. First, Bill and Hillary Clinton had this to say on their recent post. President Biden has capped his extraordinary career of service with a presidency that has lifted America out of an unprecedented pandemic, created millions of new jobs, rebuilt a battered economy, strengthened our democracy, and restored our standing in the world. By any measure, he has advanced our founders' charge to build a more perfect union, and in his own stated goal of restoring the soul of our nation. We join millions of Americans in thanking President Biden for all he's accomplished, standing up for America time and time again, with his North Star always being what's best for the country. We're honored to join the president in endorsing Vice President Harris, and we'll do whatever we can to support her. We've lived through many ups and downs, but nothing has made us more worried for our country than the threat posed by a second Trump term. He's promised to be a dictator on day one, and the recent ruling by his servile Supreme Court will only embolden him to further shred the Constitution. Now is the time to support Kamala Harris and fight with everything we can to elect her. America's future depends on it. And then there's this very powerful response from former President Barack Obama. In part, it says, Joe Biden has been one of America's most consequential presidents, as well as a dear friend and partner to me. Today, we've also been reminded again that he's a patriot of the highest order. 16 years ago, when I began my search for a vice president, I knew about Joe's remarkable career in public service. But what I came to admire even more was his character, his deep empathy, and his hard-earned resilience. He helped end the pandemic, created millions of jobs, lowered the cost of prescription drugs, passed the first major piece of gun safety legislation in 30 years. He made the biggest investment to address climate change in history and fought to ensure the rights of working people to organize for fair wages and benefits. Internationally, he restored America's standing in the world, revitalized NATO, and mobilized the world to stand up against Russian aggression in Ukraine. More than that, President Biden has pointed us away from the 4 years of chaos, falsehood, and division that had characterized Donald Trump's administration. I believe that Joe Biden's vision of a generous, prosperous, and united America that provides opportunity for everyone will be on full display at the Democratic Convention in August. And I expect that every single one of us are prepared to carry that message of hope and progress forward into November and beyond. For now, Michelle and I just want to express our love and gratitude to Joe and Jill for leading us so ably and courageously during these perilous times, and for their commitment to the ideals of freedom and equality that this country was founded on. Well, Jagger, as solidarity takes hold of a fractured campaign, maybe the pain of the last few weeks may well be replaced by an optimism that could be embodied by Vice President Harris. She is, after all, everything the MAGA fascists who just convened their doleful convention, everything that they hate with a passion. She's strong, she's smart, she's tenacious, she's multicultural in her heritage, and she married a nice Jewish guy, and she's young. Now, if they tell you they're licking their chops and she'll be a cakewalk to beat, that is fear talking. I mean, look at the GOP MAGA convention, then look at Vice President Harris. She's everything those old white Gilead ghouls hate, because she's everything they fear. She represents the future they dread. And in case you need reminding why, check this out.
Sick of this? Well, think about this. He's a world leader in temper tantrum. She never loses her cool. She prosecuted sex predators. He is one. She shut down for-profit colleges that swindled Americans. He was a for-profit college.
At Trump University, we teach success.
Literally. He's owned by the big banks. She's the attorney general who beat the biggest banks in America and forced them to pay homeowners $18 billion. He's tearing us apart. She'll bring us together. This is Trump. And in every possible way, this is the anti-Trump. So if that's what you're looking for in your next president, there's really only one. Kamala.
Well, let's hope party unity prevails, and out of the chaos comes clarity. As Shakespeare said, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Well, Vice President Harris, she stands at the apex of history today, and if history is written by the victors, then we all need to stand with Harris. And together, from this moment forth, we will not let those bastards grind us down.
All right.
It seems every...
All right. Yes. Kamala Harris is the presumptive nominee. She's got enough delegates, and the party is being unified. Even the Nikki Haley pact has supported her. So, like I said, this was going to happen either the first month or first year of the presidency. She was going to become the next, the 47th, probably 47th or 48th president of the United States, because this is what happened. It was going to happen any which way. Again, so I still say the Democrats panicked, but again, thank you, Joe, for your service. Okay, we're going to see what led up to Joe being asked to drop out.
Anger inside of the campaign, and we'll just say it: anger at Steve Ricchetti and anger at Mike Donilon, that the campaign believed, and people inside the White House who loved Joe Biden believed they weren't giving the straight story to Joe Biden. That changed Friday night. Word started spreading around the campaign. Message received by Ricchetti. Ricchetti and Donilon were going to get the information together, especially Ricchetti, and he was going to go deliver the bad news to the president this weekend.
Yeah,
what can you tell us?
Here's what happened this weekend in Rehoboth Beach. The president, of course, still battling COVID, still isolating at his family home, summoning his two closest aides, Donilon and Ricchetti. They were there for him in 2016 when he decided not to run. They were there again in 2019 when he decided to jump into that campaign. They are his closest advisors, and then they presented him Saturday morning with new information. As we reported exclusively, new battleground state polls that show the president down in all 7 battlegrounds, and also support really slipping in places that Democrats have won now for cycles. Virginia, New Mexico, Colorado, all of those now in jeopardy.
So there it is. I mean, can't believe they made me pay all that money on ads against him. Not fair.
Not fair. Wonder if there will be, like, in a book in 2 years, reporting that indicates that there were some people who knew Biden's condition had deteriorated, and that this debate that was set months earlier than debates between general election candidates typically are set, that it was a bit of a like, hey, we can either reset the narrative or we can begin this campaign to get him to step aside. I wonder if there was some of that, at least in the thinking of some people. I mean, we won't know for a while, but without this,
Worked out that way.
it worked out. Like, could you imagine if we were in this situation past the convention? It would have been horrible.
Horrible.
So this is why this was a good thing, and it's needed energy for the Democrats.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show.
Let's not hit the subscribe button. What you do is you hit subscribe. You subscribe to us, the Common Sense Party podcast, or Ninja of Another Color, or the Cartoon Rewind podcast. Yes, so according to them, no one was giving him the correct information. He didn't know he was down. He thought he was going to win, so gave him the information, and then he stepped aside and gave it to Kamala Harris. So let's go to our guy Bo to see what he's saying.
Let's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about Biden and Harris and passing the torch and all of that stuff. We're going to talk about the dynamics currently at play and run through some information that is important to understand. If you have missed the news, which seems unlikely, but President Biden has declined to continue to seek the nomination for the Democratic Party for 2024, dropped out of the race. There is a growing consensus around Harris as putting her forth as the nominee. At some places, it's being treated like that as a foregone conclusion. It is not. There is no line where it just passes like that. She still has to win at the convention. She is getting support being thrown her way from across the Democratic Party. You've had the Clintons, you've had Elizabeth Warren, Cori Bush, obviously Biden come out and provide support for her. The FEC filings have already been changed. Whatever it was before, I want to say the Biden-Harris campaign has now been renamed Harris for President. That has already happened. That paperwork is already in. Currently, Harris is making literally hundreds of phone calls trying to shore up support ahead of the convention, which is August 19th, starts August 19th. And at this point, we don't know how that's going to play out. There could be other people who kind of throw their hat in the ring, or it could be very orderly. We don't know yet. And this seems like it goes without saying, but the race has fundamentally changed in a whole bunch of different ways. Trump is now the old guy. There's a lot of rhetoric that may come back to bite the Republican Party. Now, at the same time, be ready for a bunch of cheap political attacks on Harris. There's going to be tons. And they will probably echo the same sort of attacks that went against Obama for the exact same reason. So that's where everything is at the moment. This is obviously a dynamic situation. The question that has come in the most is, how do I feel about it? It's risky. It's risky. This was a decision made in large part based on information polling and perceptions that I'm not sure were accurate. I have a lot of questions about the practical logistics. I will put a video down below from the other channel where I kind of go over all of them at once. I don't have answers to most of those still. There has been an indication from the Democratic leadership that they're going to put out information about this very quickly. Probably should have gone out first, just saying. So that's where things are now. There are a bunch of questions coming in right now as far as, about the whole lightning rod theory, which, I will put out a video on that. And then how the convention is fundamentally changed now. And those will be coming out shortly, videos on those topics. But this is just a brief overview of where things are at the moment. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
Yeah, that is Bo. Always giving us good information. Again, I think they panicked because the polls are not that correct. Because they don't ask everyone. But I just need to know who answers the poll. I got one question about Trump, and I said he was bad. That's it. I might not get another one because I'm an independent. I'm not a Democrat nor a Republican. But I got one text. What do I think about Trump? From 1 to 10, I put 0. So I guess they will use me as a pollster. So, all right, we're gonna move a little bit to Project 2025. A lot of people are not taking it serious, but that's the GOP playbook. This is why a lot of people are up in arms. I know I am because I read it, not just listening to people I've read. I saw it, I downloaded it, and it's just a manifest of how to move power from co-equal branches into one. That's a dictatorship. And they might not get it done now, so that's why we got to vote every time. Democracy is not a one election thing. You got to vote, got to show up every time. I know it's boring, but you got to show up every time. Got to be consistent. All right, let's listen to Dan Lebertard. I like Dan, and listen to this.
News of the weekend. And before we get to Jamel Hill, I do just want to tell you about Project 2025. I will try not to inundate you here. I think that everyone should vote and that everyone should know what might really be coming next year if Trump gets elected. It's a playbook for his second term. It's organized by the Heritage Foundation. It's a right-wing think tank. He claims to have no idea who's behind it, even though 140 or more of his former administration officials, like a lot of whom are sort of organized crime family felon criminals, helped to craft it. But the distance that came from Trump came only after the president of the Heritage Foundation said earlier this month, quote, "We're in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be," end quote. Before that, in 2022, when Trump was talking about the Heritage Foundation, he said, quote, "They're going to lay the groundwork and detailed plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America, and that's coming," end quote. I tell you all of this because here are 22 of the agenda items from a 922-page playbook that represents a better plan for how to dismantle government and systems in this country. Now that after the buffoonery of 2016, they actually know how to rig everything in the system. 22 of the agenda items. End climate protections. Increase Arctic drilling. Eliminate free weather forecasts. Eliminate public unions. Eliminate the Department of Education. End free lunch at school. Teach Christian beliefs in schools. Ban books about slavery. Ban African American and gender studies. Ban porn. Ban the pill used in half of abortions. Defund the Department of Homeland Security and replace it with a horseback-mounted border patrol. Begin mass deportation of immigrants and incarcerate them in, quote, camps. Defund the FBI and put the Justice Department under presidential control. Defund NPR and PBS. Raise prescription drug prices. Raise the retirement age. Raise taxes for the working class. Give tax breaks to corporations and the working class. Ban transgender people from the military and consider reinstituting the draft. Promote capital punishment. Use the military to break up protests.
Wait. Ban porn?
Yes, ban porn. All jokes aside, porn is a billion-dollar business, even though it's not hurting anyone underage or whatever, but that's what it is. They're going to ban porn, but defund the FBI, get rid of the Department of Education, realist the draft, tax working class people, give tax breaks to the rich. No, we've come too far. And that's for any Republican president, not just Trump. You got to be consistent. You got to show up. Stop voting against your own interests. You got to be educated. You got to shore up the education so our population don't fall for the okie doke. They're counting on you not paying attention. They're counting on you getting your news on TikTok, on Facebook, where a lot of fake news, AI can be doctored and you're not learning. You got to be more vigilant. Tell somebody. I'm requesting it all my age range from 50 to 55. Please inform anyone younger than you that you got to come out and vote. White, black, green, I don't care what it is. You got to come out and vote because we got to be consistent. All right. Again, a lot of people say Project 2025 is a joke, but listen to this. They're coming for your taxes. And a lot of people, I want to make more money, but as long as my money is being used wisely, you can tax me what you want. But check this out. Project 25 is raising your taxes.
That the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 was just their plan to pack the federal government with Trump lovers who would then go after his political enemies, then you could not be more wrong. Because, folks, Project 2025 actually has policy proposals that do not involve revenge. Except they kind of do involve a little bit of revenge, right? But it's not revenge on Donald Trump's political enemies. It's revenge on the working class. Because buried deep in Project 2025's 900-plus page report is their tax plan that they want Donald Trump to implement, which would lower taxes for millionaires and corporations while raising taxes by an enormous amount for low-income and working-class families making less than $94,000 a year. This tax plan is nothing short of insanity that would destroy the United States economy almost immediately. So here's what they want to do. Right now in the United States, we have 7 different tax brackets as part of our progressive tax system. 10%, 12%, 22%, 24%, 32%, 35%, topping out at 37%. Project 2025 says 7 is too many. Let's just have 2 tax brackets, a 15% and a 30%. Now here's how that would work. For people earning less than $168,000 a year, your tax rate would be 15%. You make more than 168, your tax rate drops to 30%. Well, with the way the tax brackets are now, the lowest tax bracket for low-income Americans is 10%. So those people would see their taxes raised from 10% to 15%, which of course is a 50% increase. So the poorest people in this country, under Project 2025, under Donald Trump's tax plan, would see their taxes go up by 50%. For people making under $94,000 a year, their taxes would jump from 12% to 15%, which is a 25% increase. By the way, the median household income in the United States, I think, is $74,000. So the majority of Americans, working class people, you, me, we would see our taxes go up by no less than 25%. That would mean, according to an analysis, if you're at the higher end of that spectrum, you would be paying an additional $10,200 per year under Donald Trump's tax plan. By comparison, a married couple with 2 children and earnings of $5 million a year would enjoy a $325,000 per year tax cut. So the wealthy pay less, and you pay insanely more than you pay right now. Oh, but don't worry, folks, that's not the end of it. They're just not just getting rid of tax brackets. They're also doing the following things. They're cutting the corporate tax rate down to 18% from its current 21%. They're reducing capital gains tax to 15%. Currently, high-income earners pay a tax of 20% on their capital gains. They're eliminating credits for green energy projects created by the Inflation Reduction Act. There's not even a reason to do that other than friggin' spite. They're considering the introduction of a U.S. consumption tax, such as a national sales tax, which of course would mean our taxes would go even higher. And they're eliminating the Federal Reserve's mandate to maintain full employment in the labor market. Now, you may be wondering about that last one. What does that have to do with taxes? Well, the answer is it doesn't really have anything to do with taxes. What it is the Federal Reserve has this mandate where we need to hit full employment. But unfortunately for corporations, when we hit full employment, that means there's fewer people for every job opening. So that gives the power to the people seeking jobs to demand better benefit, better pay, and all these things that corporations don't want to do. When unemployment goes higher, there's more applicants per job vacancies. And that's what corporations want, so they want to get rid of a mandate saying we want everybody to work. This plan would be an absolute disaster. This would devastate the United States economy in ways that we have never seen. And this is Project 2025's plan, which of course means it is essentially the plan of the Trump administration. America's Lawyer has launched its own YouTube channel. Now this channel...
Thank you, America's Lawyer. If you want to sign up, go ahead and sign up. But again, they're coming for your money. They don't care about poor people. That's what I don't understand. Most of the Republicans Party are poor, undereducated whites, and they're making them. They're going to take their money from them. That's all they're going to do. The tax cut from the poor to the rich. It doesn't work. Trickle-down economics does not work. It's been proven for 40 years. Reagan tried that shit. It does not work. Again, and inflation is down. This is the funny part. Inflation is down. We're fully employed. Black unemployment is down. There are no U.S. troops in a war. They're trying to reelect a dude who installed tariffs that shit out of the economy and put $8 trillion on the deficit. Make it make sense, man. Just make it make sense. All right. We're going to go back to Bo on the fifth column. He's talking about Obama. Check this out.
People, it's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about Vice President. Harris and former President Obama and Senator Manchin. And we are going to talk about the differences and similarities between Obama and Manchin. Yeah, let me tell you, since I never thought I'd say. Okay, so shortly after everything occurred with Biden and Harris becoming the apparent frontrunner, Manchin decided to offer his opinion. Now, I know almost everybody watching this channel, you were sitting at home wondering and waiting for the advice of Manchin. So let me tell you what he said. He briefly entertained the idea of, I guess, rejoining the Democratic Party and running to get the nomination. That did not last long. He then said that he would not serve as Harris's vice president, has not endorsed her at time of filming, and has called for a, quote, mini primary. Now, most political analysts kind of view the risks associated with that mini primary as something that could literally just hand the election to Trump. Something that most people would see as a bad move. Okay? So, what about former President Obama? He has also, at time of filming, not endorsed Harris, and he has signaled his openness to an open convention. Why would he do that? If I had to guess, he understands the risk of a chaotic convention, and he is positioning himself as the impartial moderator, the elder statesman who's been there, who can't be president, who doesn't have anything to gain, who can help smooth over any issues at the convention. If he endorses somebody, he can't do that. It would make it very, very hard for him to do that. My guess is that he is kind of holding back to preserve his political capital, to try to make sure that that convention moves smoothly. So that is, that's what's going on. And this is one of those instances where you have very similar actions that are probably coming from very, very different places. I'm going to suggest that the person who entertained trying to get the nomination suddenly saying, oh, maybe we should have a mini primary. Maybe they didn't really give up on the idea of trying to obtain the nomination. I mean, maybe he did, and he just thinks that this is the right move to, trigger a bunch of Democratic infighting at the convention. Maybe there is some political motive that I do not see, but I'm going to suggest that if things get too chaotic and too combative at that convention, it will hand the election to Trump. This convention is way more important than any convention in most people's lives that are watching this channel. Not all, because some were around for one a while back, but it is going to matter, and it has to run smoothly. It has to run smoothly. It is incredibly important. So I would continue to watch these developments. It is worth noting that despite, the important Manchin endorsement not going her way, she has already picked up scores of endorsements from across the Democratic coalition, from establishment Democrats to progressive Democrats to unions. Like, they're just pouring in at this point. It does appear that the overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party is coalescing behind her. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
Again, we're going to break it down into two parts. First part, Joe Manchin. You give a fuck, who was going to vote for you anyway? Get your happy ass out of the Democratic Party. You said you wanted to be an independent. you're fucking independent. Scotch your mother's gun that way. We ain't want to talk about you. I agree what Obama did because he is going to probably endorse her at the convention on the stage in front of everyone. We'll have 3 living presidents: Biden, Clinton, Obama. Shit, we might even get Bush to endorse her. You never know. So I agree with that. I agree that he is doing that. So no hiccups, no infighting, none of that. And one thing I forgot to mention, I think another reason that the Democrats made this change is because a lot of people died. A lot of people died within like a short span. Maxine Waters, not Maxine Waters. I forgot her name, but she's a senator from Texas. She died of cancer. He had COVID. Richard Simmons died. Bill Walton died. A lot of famous people died, like within a short span. And it was like, a lot of that hit the news, and I think that's why they uptick to get him out of there. All right. If you didn't know, Trump picked his running mate. It was JV Vance. He called him Hitler just like everybody else, but he's sucking up to him. So, this was the most craziest thing I ever saw. Check this out. I don't think they're gonna win, but that's just me. I'm an independent, but this is not good.
Now, some would argue they lack an inherent connectivity. The people generally like to laugh with somebody that they can relate to, right? Well, today, GOP vice presidential nominee JV Vance, he grabbed the mic and took to the stage to dispel that very idea by showcasing his stand-up chops. And boy, oh boy, did he get a reaction. As you'll see in a minute in the video clip we're going to play, you're going to want to play it over and over again. Now, I'm not one to find fun at people in embarrassing situations or laugh at wacky trampoline accidents on tape, but when somebody invites you to willingly watch their suffering, well, I think the polite thing to do is to just pay attention. So at open mic night earlier at a daytime rally in Middletown, Ohio, the commander from The Handmaid's Tale tried his hand at witty observations and political joke-making. But let's also remember, JD and JV, that's dangerous stuff to try, unless, of course, you're a professional.
Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier. No one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
Now, I can't wait to show you this comedic tour de force by JV Vance. And right after, I'm going to show you Fox's reaction, which is gut-busting in its own right. Now, when you catch this rising star live and on a roll, please be generous with your applause. Vance has a long, proud history of hillbilly humor to live up to.
Now we got along, my life was real sunny, but only one thing would ruin our fun. I know you love me, but you worship money, and you got mad when I offered you. Where are you tonight? Why did you leave me here all alone? I searched the world over, and I thought I'd found true love. You met another, and he was gone.
So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome a first-time comic from Hillbilly Country who wants to leave you laughing like Laughing Kamala. Give it up for JV Vance. Now, please laugh. No, really laugh.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe. Well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday, and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys.
Now watch as his captive audience over there at Fox, well, as they say in vaudeville, reach for the hook. I mean, he's playing to a hometown crowd. How much worse could it get?
Actually swimming at the swimming pool, and somebody brought over their phone and showed me the news that Joe Biden.
All right, you've been listening to JV Vance giving his first solo speech since becoming Donald Trump's running mate. 9 days after the attempted assassination of the former president, a packed crowd there in his hometown, in his high school. John, a remarkable moment.
Well, they say dying is easy, but comedy is hard. Certainly, Trump's VP nominee just learned both lessons the hard way.
Yo, that's embarrassing. But they made the wrong pick. Overconfidence got them. They are not going to win this election because they are panicking. You can see it all over. They are panicking from Fox News to TikTok. So check it out. And then we're not going to listen to all 13 minutes.
Which just began today, has announced a whopping $81 million fundraising haul since she entered the race. That is the largest 24-hour total of any candidate in U.S. history.
The MAGA Republicans are having a complete meltdown right now over Vice President Kamala Harris becoming the Democrats' presumptive nominee for president. And just moments ago, the MAGA Republican VP pick of Donald Trump, the total phony and fraud, JD Vance, was giving one of his first speeches, this one in Middletown, Ohio, and it was just so boring and weird that Fox had to even cut away from it. People are second guessing now, should JD Vance have even been picked? Hearing that Donald Trump is like, why did I pick this guy? Take a look right here. This is JD Vance, and then watch Fox cut away from it. Watch this.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe. Well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday, and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but
who is laughing?
It's good.
Who is laughing?
I love you guys.
He is bombing. He is bombing.
We prepared this video at the Midas Touch Network about JD Vance's speech in Ohio, and we said, hey, Donald, giving off those Jeb Bush vibes that you so admired. Here, watch this.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe. Well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday, and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys.
But I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
Now, before JD Vance spoke, if you want to see the complete and utter meltdown that MAGA is having, they're now saying at these Trump campaigns that they will be declaring a civil war if Donald Trump were to lose. We know, folks. I mean, you did a January 6th insurrection, and we know that you threaten this all the time because you're a bunch of losers. But here is at the beginning of the campaign event today, you have the MAGA Republican speaker who was introducing J.D. Vance, who's a state senator from Ohio, who's a Republican, threatening civil war. I just want you to watch their behavior. Play this clip.
Fight! We got time. Come on. Hey, we are in the fight for the soul of our nation. We are in a fight for our kids and our grandkids, a fight that we can never imagine. I believe wholeheartedly Donald Trump and Butler County's J.D. Vance are the last chance to save our country politically. I'm afraid if we lose this one, it's going to take a civil war to save the country, and it will be saved. It's the greatest experiment in the history of mankind. And if we come down to a civil war, I'm glad we got people like Schmitty and the Bikers for Trump on our side.
And folks, that's who they are. And that's why I always say here on the Midas Touch Network, whether you're liberal, progressive, independent, or a mainstream conservative, or like a real Republican, not this MAGA, you should look at that and say, wait a minute, at Trump campaigns, they're declaring civil war. They're trying to instigate civil war, or saying if Trump loses, there will be a civil war. How un-American is that? And they're screaming, fight, fight, fight. It's the exact opposite of what this country needs. And that shouldn't even be a political position. You should just search your heart and say, what in the world is that? By the way, we're saying, what in the world is that? Then you have MAGA Mike Johnson going out, and he says, look, we will be bringing litigation to stop Vice President Kamala Harris. We're going to be rolling out lawsuits because, again, whether they're threatening civil war or litigation, they're going to try to use all levers to institute Project 2025. These are losers, and sore losers, who engage in this type of behavior repeatedly. Here's MAGA Mike Johnson.
And in some of the states, there are impediments to just switching someone out like that. 14 million people went through the process and chose this nominee, Joe Biden. Now a handful of people have gotten together and decided he's no longer suitable. That's not how this system works. They are violating democratic principles. And I think that's a real problem. And I think there'll be a lot said about that in the days ahead.
And then, of course, he's not even consistent about it, because right as he's saying that, he then goes, actually, we prefer to run against Vice President Kamala Harris. We're ready. We're ready to, we like her at the top of the ticket. So you're going to try to file lawsuits. You like her at the top of the ticket. You've got people at Trump campaigns threatening civil war. Hey, other media other than Midas Touch, other than this network, can you cover this stuff, please? Can you just show the American people this stuff, please? It'd be nice. There's other independent media networks that do it, but corporate media, hello, play this clip.
It should be tougher to beat. She will not be tougher to beat. No, not at all. We're excited about Kamala being at the top of the ticket.
And by the way, Vice President Kamala Harris has raised now over $100 million in just a little bit over 24 hours since she became the presumptive Democratic nominee, and Republicans just simply can't handle it. By the way, here's a great photo by this account. They show J.D. Vance over here, and they go, I can't explain it, but he looks like the guy at the bachelor party that doesn't know any of the groomsmen. Just a funny line. It's a funny observation. And I intuitively know exactly what they mean by that. But also, if you look at J.D. Vance's background, he claims he's from Appalachia. He's really not. He's from the suburbs of Ohio. His whole life story, the hillbilly elegy, it's like a total fraud and a total scam. And he worked in Silicon Valley after going to law school. He worked for Peter Thiel, made a lot of money doing that, then came back to Ohio, started a sham charity that claimed to address the opioid epidemic in the state, but actually just exploited people, took money, didn't give it to the community, funded a researcher who actually works with Purdue Pharma to put opioids back into the
community. And basically, he used it as a sham to hire political consultants and to launch his political career. I mean, it's just an utterly pathetic human being. And so I suppose a perfect pick for Donald Trump. Also, he previously called Donald Trump America's Hitler. Can we just show you what Kamala Harris-Trump debate is going to look like? Because I went back to our archives here at the Midas Touch Network. This was the debate between Harris and Pence. And we released this video October 8th of 2020. So I'm pumped up. What about you? Here, play this clip.
This is important. I want to add, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. It is asking too much of the people. Susan, it is asking too much of the people.
Well, Susan, thank you. Although I would like to go back.
I move on.
Well, thank you, but I would like to go back.
In 1860.
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
Yes, Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Okay.
We still learn from it, and I think the American people, I'll say again, can be.
Vice President Vance, I'm sorry.
What we have done. She has
15 seconds because.
Well, I got to have more than that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry, Vice President. Look, I had more time than she said. The truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
Repeal the Trump tax cut.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation. Okay?
Please.
Okay.
And so while MAGAs are threatening civil war and lawsuits and whining, what do we see? The Democrats, I see energy. I see a revitalized, energetic group of Democrats. Here's Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries kind of mocking the MAGA meltdown. Let me show you, play the clip.
In terms of my Republican colleagues, former President Donald Trump and extreme MAGA Republicans are having a meltdown right now. A complete and total meltdown. Why? Because their presidential nominee is unpopular. The extreme MAGA Republican policies are unpopular, including trying to impose a nationwide abortion ban on the American people. And their Project 2025 is unpopular. They're having a meltdown right now. All we want to do as Democrats is have a debate about moving the country forward and continuing to put people over politics.
Here he is one more time talking about the energy that exists right now. Let's play it.
Dear Jeffries, first, will you endorse Kamala Harris? And then I have one other question for you.
Well, Leader Schumer and I are scheduled to meet with Vice President Harris shortly. The House came back into session today. The Senate does not come back into session tomorrow. I'm excited for that meeting. And let me say this, that Vice President Kamala Harris has excited the community. She's excited the House Democratic Caucus, and she's exciting the country. And so I'm looking forward to sitting down with her in person in short order with Leader Schumer, and we'll have more to say about the path forward as soon as that meeting concludes.
While you're just kind of watching that, I mean, I don't know about you, but I am looking forward to showing you the contrast between Vice President Harris and Donald Trump. This is a video that we made, and I want to show it to you. Donald Trump in steep mental decline. Just take a watch of this video, and things are going to get interesting. Here, play the clip.
And my stupid people, when I wanted to refute it, they said, "Sir, don't dignify it with a rebuttal."
Have you been noticing peculiar behavior recently in someone you know?
Carried on, Barry.
Someone who mixes fiction and reality?
The late, great Hannibal Lecter is a wonderful man.
Perhaps someone of advanced age you have known for years.
Did you just see Maduro, Venezuela? It's unbelievable, Venezuela.
Of course, we all have our goofs. But consistently odd behavior can be a sign of frontotemporal dementia, a degenerative disease of the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain that dramatically impairs cognitive function. And there are some key signs to look out for, like slurring words.
The failing New York Times by an anonymous, really an anonymous.
Struggling to find the correct words is another sign.
The Mueller report, I wish, covered the oranges of the investigation.
You may also notice someone veering into incoherent ideas detached from reality.
You know what I'd do if there was a shark or you get electrocuted? I'll take electrocution every single time. I'm not getting near the shark.
Or an inability to complete simple sentences.
Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat.
Other notable symptoms include impaired motor function, such as a wavering limb, and decreased balance, often accompanied by a signature lean or arched stance. If someone you know is demonstrating several or all of these symptoms, they are seriously unwell. As a matter of safety, they must be relieved of critical responsibilities and disqualified from any position of authority. Remember, frontotemporal dementia is a degenerative disease. Cognitive function will never return and will only deteriorate further. Don't ignore the signs.
Why did you pick JD Vance? Why did you pick JD Vance?
We've always had a good chemistry, and originally JD was probably not for me, but he didn't know me. And then when we got to know each other, he liked me maybe more than anybody liked me, and he would stick up for me, and he'd fight for the worker as much as I fight for the worker. We just had an automatic chemistry.
I don't believe that at all. Donald Trump and JD Vance have no chemistry whatsoever. Their relationship is incredibly forced, and JD Vance is a black hole of charisma. Leave a like on the video if you agree. But Donald Trump and JD Vance had a long day of campaigning. Well, JD Vance did. He had 2 rallies today and then met with Donald Trump at the end of the day to do an interview with Jesse Waters on Fox News, and the interview didn't go any better than JD Vance's rallies. Watch. It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys. That was JD Vance making a joke about wokeness, but it just doesn't land. He comes across as a Trump-light MAGA copycat who spits the same vacuous talking points but has nothing original to offer. He literally just says what Donald Trump says in a worse way. I mean, I hate Donald Trump, but at least Donald Trump has a stage presence compared to JD Vance. Watch this clip of Donald Trump.
In fact, I'm not talking about lots of other industries. I'm talking about the auto industry because it's such a big industry. I can say we're going to bring back cement. We're going to bring back all sorts. I'm just talking very simple. It's so simple. It's going to happen so fast. You're going to be at a level as though you were from 30, 40 years ago. You're going to manufacture cars again at a level that you haven't seen in many, many decades. You probably have to get rid of this fool, this stupid idiot representing the United Auto Workers because he sells the auto. You know, I'm much more popular than anybody with the auto workers. We're going to get 95% of their vote.
Yeah, I take that back. Donald Trump was rambling completely incoherently during that about cement. I have no idea what he was talking about, but here's a clip of Donald Trump and JD Vance during their interview with Jesse Waters, where Donald Trump pretends that he's read JD Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy. Remember, he didn't even know JD Vance's name a few months ago. He thought it was J.P. Mandel. But Donald Trump has also pretended that he's read the Bible, pretended that he's read the Constitution. This is a pattern with him. Watch this clip.
And he wrote a book which was a classic, as you know. And it was all about the working men and women and how they aren't being treated fairly. And he was right about that. And I understood that maybe better than anyone else. And we just have had a great relationship.
I have more clips of them, but again, their relationship is so incredibly forced, and there are rumblings behind the scenes that Donald Trump and his team actually regret picking JD Vance now that Kamala Harris is the nominee for the Democrats. She has raised $81 million in 24 hours and is exciting the base more than Joe Biden could. I'm sorry, Joe Biden has been a great president, but as a candidate, not a president, he has not been exciting the base like he needed to. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is somehow riling up the entire Republican base while going on fascistic rants like this.
You're not going to teach a criminal not to be a criminal. Not going to happen. And you don't have the time, you don't have the energy because you have to do other things. That is why as soon as I take the oath of office, we will begin the largest deportation operation in the history of our country, even larger than that of President Dwight D. Eisenhower many years ago. He was a big deportation person.
Republicans and Donald Trump are gaslighting and projecting harder than I've ever seen them in the past. Donald Trump in that clip was talking about criminals when he himself is the criminal convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records. They also say that Democrats are the real threat to democracy when Donald Trump tried to subvert the will of the American people in 10 different ways. These clips enrage me because you can just tell that Donald Trump knows he's projecting. He knows he's gaslighting. Watch this next clip of JD Vance and Donald Trump.
Did we have enough people? Why didn't we have enough people? Somebody said that a lot of people were put on Biden's detail. The problem is Biden doesn't draw anybody. He draws flies. He draws nobody. And, you don't need very many people for that because he does not draw. 30 people show up and we have 55, 60,000 people show up.
These are just baseless attacks. Biden has had many massive rallies, and when it actually matters, on November 5th, November 6th of 2020, Joe Biden was able to mobilize one of the largest coalitions in American history, the anti-Trump coalition, and beat Donald Trump. So Donald Trump can say that nobody shows up to Joe Biden's rallies, but number one, that's false. He has massive rallies. Number two, Joe Biden beat him on election day when it matters, and Kamala Harris is going to do the same if we campaign in the right way, if we all mobilize. Leave a like if you agree. Watch this clip of Donald Trump attacking Kamala Harris for her laugh. That is all they have, is her laugh. Watch.
House from crooked Joe Biden and Kamala. I call her Laughing Kamala. You ever watch her laugh? She's crazy. You can tell a lot by her laugh. No, she's crazy. She's nuts. She's not as crazy as Nancy Pelosi, crazy Nancy.
You know we're ahead when we raised $100 million in 24 hours, when we now have a younger candidate running against the oldest candidate running for president in American history, and Sean Hannity is now coping on Fox News saying you might be seeing some good polls for the Democrats in the next few days. They have been relentlessly reporting about the polls on Fox News because Trump has been beating Biden, but now that they're bracing for a storm of polls showing Kamala beating Trump, they have to prime their audience because their audience is so weak they can't step out of their bubble that Fox News likes to prime them just like they did before the 2020 election. Watch.
All right, buckle up because Democrats, the state-run media mob, they're now pitching Kamala as the second coming of Jesus, which I can assure you she is not. The puff pieces, they're already being written. The accolades, they are pouring in from every radical, democratic, leftist, socialist, Marxist in the country. The phony polls, I promise you, will follow, showing she is energizing Democrats. She might even be beating Donald Trump in a swing state or two, or maybe three.
She might even be beating Donald Trump in a swing state or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, maybe.
His biggest vulnerability for Democrats to capitalize on, and I interviewed Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg about his response to certain Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and JD Vance trying to blame Democrats for Trump's shooting, and his reaction to even Republicans trying to distance themselves from Project 2025. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So I want to point your attention to one moment from Trump's first post-convention rally that happened in Michigan, where he said this.
And the other side's going around trying to make me sound extreme, like I'm an extremist. I'm not. I'm a person with great common sense. I'm not an extremist at all. Like some on the right, severe right, came up with this Project 25, and I don't even know. I mean, some of them I know who they are, but they're very, very conservative, just like you have. They're sort of the opposite of the radical left, okay? You have the radical left and you have the radical right, and they come up with this, I don't know what the hell it is. It's Project 25. He's involved in Project, and then they read some of the things, and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. But I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it. But what they do is misinformation and disinformation.
The expression here, a hit dog will holler. It's not just rare, but almost non-existent to see Donald Trump show any weakness on any policy issue. Like, this is a guy who, at this same rally in Michigan, complimented President Xi for, quote, ruling with an iron fist over 1.4 billion people. He's openly fantasizing about autocracy, meaning it's not like Trump to stray away from an issue that might otherwise seem unpopular. His supporters literally cheer him on when he complains about flushing the toilet, not exactly a discerning crowd. And he doesn't seem afraid to embrace any position, really, because he knows how undiscerning that audience is. Which is why it's so telling, then, that Donald Trump is trying so hard to run away from Project 2025. If you didn't think that it was damaging to him before, the fact that he is so desperate to distance himself here really does give the whole game away. Especially considering his denials are complete BS. Like, are we really supposed to believe that the guy whose own top White House officials authored this project has no idea what it is, including literal cabinet secretaries like Russell Vought, his Office of Management and Budget Director, and Christopher Miller, his Acting Secretary of Defense, and Ben Carson, his HUD Secretary, and Peter Navarro, and Paul Dans, and Rick Dearborn, and Ken Cuccinelli, and literally 200 more administration officials whose sole intent is to implement it when Donald Trump gets into office, which was quite literally what Kevin Roberts, the Heritage Foundation president, said in public.
We've been working with all of them on one project since soon after Joe Biden took the oath of office, before any conservative presidential candidates had even entered the race. As my friend and colleague Paul Dans before talked about briefly, our Project 2025 has developed a comprehensive policy agenda, but even more importantly, recruiting people, 20,000 people to go into the next administration, hopefully to help take back this country for you and for your audiences. We want no credit. We want the American people, if President Trump is elected again, President Trump and his administration, to take credit for that. But it will also be a great sign if all of this is successful, that in fact, as we know in our prayer time, but maybe not every time when we're watching the news, that the Lord is still smiling upon America.
So yeah, either Trump is dangerously ignorant about what everyone who would staff his White House would do once in the White House, or he's just saying what he has to say to fool the rubes out there into thinking that he's got nothing to do with Project 2025 because it's politically toxic.
Beasley somehow getting him to briefly perhaps to compensate for our friend Luke Beasley somehow getting him to briefly criticize MAGA Republicans, self-professed a nonpartisan journalist, Piers Morgan, spent 30 minutes spraying progressive journalist Mehdi Hasan with false equivalences on his latest pro-Trump anti-Biden panel, but unfortunately for Piers, Mehdi brought the receipts. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have another pro-Trump, anti-Biden Piers Morgan panel, which means we've got to talk about it. And it's good content. It's good content for Piers. It's good content for me. I enjoy it. And this time, Piers Morgan brought back Mehdi Hasan, one of the best debaters in media and one of the best progressive commentators in media as well, to talk about the aftermath of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Piers Morgan did what he always does, which is try to create false equivalents to grade Trump and the Republicans on a curve. But thank God, Mehdi Hasan was not having it. So we're going to play some of these clips and unpack them together.
Look, that is a very fair point. I'm not a fan of Destiny, but let me just put some of what he was saying in context because I watched that discussion. I think the point he was trying to make, and I think he did it badly, is that there is a double standard here. That as with the Palestine-Israel debate, where you tend to only ask Palestinians to condemn and not Israelis, journalists, not just yourself, tend to obsess over liberals condemning stuff while conservatives get a pass. And I think that is what bothers a lot of people. It certainly bothers me. And, you mentioned condemning violence, Piers. On Monday's show, you had Ben Shapiro on. I think you had Dan, the Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw on, and you had Rudy Giuliani on, right? All three of them have at some point glorified violence, embraced violence, incited violence. Dan Crenshaw's put out videos where he's blowing stuff up, beating up left-wingers. Rudy Giuliani, as you know, Piers, on January the 6th, told an armed mob to do trial by combat. Ben Shapiro had to deny any influence on the Quebec City mosque shooter who killed 6 Muslims in January 2017. Ben Shapiro called Obama a fascist. You didn't ask any of those 3 people to condemn their own past. So that's, I think, what bothers Destiny, certainly bothers me.
And it bothers me too. This is the trouble that Piers Morgan and enlightened centrists like him have going up against somebody like Mehdi Hasan, because he has the receipts, he has the knowledge, and he's absolutely correct, as we've discussed. Ben Shapiro is just an easy example because Ben Shapiro was cited in the manifesto of the Quebec mosque shooter. Now, Shapiro went on a tour very defiantly and said, I had nothing to do with it. I'm not responsible for it, both legally and morally. And when asked, okay, well, did your rhetoric contribute to such an environment? Ben Shapiro said, hell no. And yet, when the shoe's on the other foot and a registered Republican takes a shot at Donald Trump, Ben Shapiro wants to blame the increasing of the temperature from the left and Democrats and President Biden. So again, the double standard there is inexcusable. If you think rhetoric contributes to a hostile environment, which in turn can contribute to political violence, that's fine, but be symmetrical. That means Democrats and Republicans can contribute to it, and you should be prepared to call them out. Or if you think that, listen, political commentators engaging in rhetoric, we shouldn't be held not just legally, but morally. We shouldn't even be held morally responsible for whatever environment we may or may not help contribute to, then again, you should be symmetrical. Meaning, Ben, if you're giving yourself a pass, then you should give Democrats a pass too, unless, of course, you're a dishonest, unprincipled loser, which, of course, we know he is. He will constantly grade Republicans and conservatives on a curve. It doesn't matter, even in a perfect apples-to-apples comparison. Another clip here between Piers Morgan and Mehdi Hasan, and this is in response to, insinuations that Piers Morgan is a conservative. He is, but he denies it. And then he tries to pin Mehdi Hasan with a gotcha, because Mehdi Hasan has suggested that Donald Trump is a fascist and authoritarian who has used propaganda and rhetoric from Adolf Hitler.
With is, this idea that somehow the left have been completely blameless. And just to remind people, I'm not on the right. I'm not a conservative, never have been. Right? I mean, I voted for Margaret Thatcher when I was about 18, but I've also voted for Tony Blair, and I voted for, left-wing leaders before, and I ran a Daily Mirror, which, as you know, was a left-leaning newspaper in Britain for 10 years.
I just want to, Mehdi Hasan's laughing at that. Margaret Thatcher, of course, being, the British Ronald Reagan. Tony Blair is not on the left. He was a close ally of George W. Bush. Again, the idea that Tony Blair is some sort of leftist acolyte, and then you see how Mehdi has to trail off because he actually can't remember the last time he voted for somebody from the Labor Party or the Liberal Democrats or things like that. He's clearly a conservative, which is why he struggled there. And that's why Mehdi Hasan was laughing.
So this idea that I'm on the right, as some people try and paint me, is for the birds. However, what I try and do is be fair-minded about the culpability of both sides. And I'll return the favor by criticizing you, because one of my big bugbears here has been the persistent analogies and comparisons of Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. I want to play.
And he goes on and plays clips of Mehdi Hasan when Mehdi Hasan was part of MSNBC, where he either participated in or said things like Donald Trump. He uses Nazi iconography, Nazi propaganda, Nazi rhetoric, and even, in certain quotes like immigrants poison the blood of our country, that is apparently lifted almost word for word from Mein Kampf. And Donald Trump, who is famously not particularly well read, according to an ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, actually had a copy of Mein Kampf as well. So again, food for thought. So we played that. This is Mehdi Hasan responding to Piers Morgan on the other side of those clips.
I stand by the line that Donald Trump is echoing the rhetoric of Adolf Hitler. He is. That's a fact. Donald Trump praised Hitler, according to his own Republican chief of staff. That is a fact. And stop saying the left calls him Hitler. You know who called him America's Hitler? His running mate, JV Vance, a Republican senator, called him America's Hitler. So by the way, he was wrong. This is the left. He was Republicans. Doesn't matter when he was wrong. You're wrong to say the left. J.D. Vance called him. Well, no, you're wrong. You're wrong, Piers, because J.D. Vance is a Republican. He compared him to Hitler. People who have looked at what Trump and said has done, fascism experts, have said the guy is echoing fascist rhetoric. This is...
Yeah, right. If the Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin said, if the semi-fascist shoe fits, then you will semi-wear it. Yeah, listen, I mean, this idea that we're somehow morally obligated to not call Donald Trump what we believe him to be and what the evidence shows him to be, which is an authoritarian who uses fascist rhetoric. And so I think it's perfectly fair to call him a fascist or a semi-fascist or whatever, because he suffered a failed assassination attempt, is ridiculous. And the idea that referring to him that way somehow makes us, again, civilly or morally responsible for a registered Republican taking a shot at him is ridiculous. And in this clip, Mehdi Hasan calls out the temperature increases. They go back and forth. Mehdi Hasan, a clearly fed up Mehdi Hasan, calls out Piers even more directly for his false equivalences and both sidesism.
You have acted as if there's two sides to this, that the Democrats are guilty of the same incitement and violence. Well, there's not. I'm sorry. All right, let's play a game.
Actually, just played a bunch of people calling him Hitler for the last 8 years.
Those are not... Sorry. Well, no, you didn't. Actually, you played a clip from Willie Geist accurately reporting that Hitler did.
No, I played many people.
Hold on.
I can play a few again if you like.
Hold on. Piers, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, leadership of the Democratic Party. Can you play to me clips of them inciting violence in the same way as Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ron DeSantis, Paul Gosar?
Are you deflecting?
Because you are deflecting, Piers. I'm not going to you both sides bullshit.
You might be.
Kudos to Mehdi Hasan. This is exactly how people should react. Listen, I praise Luke and I stand by it. Luke did a miracle when he was on Piers Morgan's show, which is that through gentility and grace and patience, he was able to redirect Piers Morgan's energy, especially when he was up against, C.J. Pearson, who is this young right-wing lunatic, right, who just clearly operates under the presumption that the very flawed, very authoritarian Republican Party is perfect. And so Luke was able to not only defeat CJ by just being much better versed on the facts, but he was also able to, again, accomplish a miracle by redirecting Piers Morgan's ire, however briefly, to the GOP, which is virtually impossible. But I also think that, people like Mehdi Hasan and more aggressive rhetoricians like him, and Wajah Ali, who was also on, I think it was the same episode that Luke was on, and I mentioned it in another video as well. The more aggressive, no-nonsense rhetoricians, I think that also has utility, because what Piers Morgan's doing isn't necessarily saying that the problem is exclusively on the left, right? Perhaps even he thinks that would be a bridge too far, but he is trying to create a false equivalence, which is just, quite frankly, indefensible, right? I mean, it's almost like saying, again, just to use a really reductive example, that you have one town in which, let's say, 10 people have a cold, and then you have another town in which there's the 50% of the population has rabies, and then you would say, both of these towns are infectious, both of these towns are plague ridden, or you have two criminals, right? One is a shoplifter and the other is an axe murderer, and you say, well, they're both criminals, and that's the end of the analysis, that you don't actually identify any meaningful distinctions between the two things that you're comparing. That is both stupid and also incredibly dishonest, right? It's both of these things, because it's not accurate. When meaningful distinctions exist between two things that you're comparing, they're probably worth identifying. But Piers Morgan is reluctant to do that because he knows that an honest, blunt assessment of the situation, even if you want to say that aggressive rhetoric exists on both sides, is fine. But then, it's objectively worse, far worse on the Republican side. I don't think Mehdi Hasan, Luke Beasley, Destiny, I don't think any people would actually have an objection with that. But what Piers Morgan wants to do is not add that second part of the sentence. He doesn't want to add the second clause. He just wants to say there are problems on both sides. Not there are problems on both sides. And by the way, analyses reveal that, one side has a much bigger problem than the other. Just the problem exists on both sides. He wants
Yeah, he wants it to exist on both sides, but it's not on both sides. It's on one side only. For our last clip, Project 2025 wants to start a second revolution. I wonder why.
Has gotten more attention in recent weeks for its right-wing policy proposals designed for transfer of power should Donald Trump or another Republican win. The conservative think tank's 900-page plan outlines policies that put forward a governing agenda that details conservative priorities should a Republican win the White House in November.
The president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, is turning heads for his comments on the project. Here's a quick clip from his appearance on right-wing outlet Real America's Voice Network. Take a look.
That we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
He also went on to say to viewers that, quote, "We are in the process of taking this country back. No one in the audience should be despairing. The reason that they are apoplectic right now, the reason that so many anchors on MSNBC, for example, are losing their minds daily is because our side is winning." So very interesting. We talked to Tom Jones on the program with the American Accountability Foundation, who received a $100,000 grant from the Heritage Foundation. That was a really interesting interview. But it doesn't seem to me that Project 2025 has the support of all Republicans. I'm curious, Amber, what your understanding of that is. Is this something that, Republicans are in lockstep with, that they really support Trump making this his platform?
Well, I know that Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. This is an independent project by the Heritage Foundation. And Trump himself has sent out multiple indications that he does not actually appreciate outside groups trying to create policy platforms for him because it gives the impression that he supports all of the things that are on it. This applies to groups like America First Policy Institute, as well as the Heritage Foundation. Both of those have been sort of chastised by the Trump campaign. But I think, what's more important in Project 2025 outside of the policy proposals is probably the staff vetting project. They are basically taking applications and resumes from, I believe, tens of thousands of individuals who would potentially be called to serve in a Republican administration and making sure that those people abide by certain conservative principles and values. I think if Trump were to win office, that would probably be a more it would probably be something that he would be more interested in aligning himself with or using as a tool to staff an administration than he would be necessarily looking at the Heritage Foundation for exactly what policy positions he's going to take in office.
Yeah, I think my concern with it is that it seems from what Tom Jones said that a lot of the positions that they're targeting, I can't speak for the Heritage Foundation, but of course the Heritage Foundation's funding the AAF. And so I would assume that this is a part of the Project 2025 agenda, but the assumption that they would produce a list of people within various departments that are regulated by Congress, that are not official appointments from the president. And it would be a clear overstepping of power for the executive branch to decide that they have say over what Congress has the final say over. And so I think that's what I'm most afraid of. And that's what I would most challenge from these people. So that statement that we're having a second revolution and that it will be bloodless if leftists allow it to be, or the left rather allows it to be. I'm curious, what the threshold for that is. Is it that the left has to initiate violence, or is it that the left has to get in the way of their agenda, which it seems that there's constitutional legal grounds to get in the way of that agenda. And so it's very concerning to hear a statement like that as someone who's on the left. I would hope that Donald Trump would distance himself from it. Given that statement, we heard that's really just making waves this week.
Nope, he's not, because there is a law called Schedule F where a lot of civil servant jobs would not be civil servants, but they'll be appointed by the executive branch. So that's why they are That's why they're taking applications. So they're trying to give the executive branch a lot of power. So we have to come out and vote again. Democracy, superpower is for it to be consistent. So please, to all my independents, all my Democrats, all my common sense leading Republicans, please come out and vote. This has been the Common Sense Party Podcast. I'm your host, DOTTLEY. Common Sense Party's mission is to inform our listeners on topics that affect the everyday person. Rate, review, follow, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to vote, and tell a friend to tell a friend to sign up. Please give us 5 stars, give us 4 stars, give us 3 stars, give us 2 stars. You can even give me 1. I don't mind if you give me 1. If you don't give me any, I'll just assume I'm doing it right. We are available on all podcast platforms. Podcast platforms. We're available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Samsung Podcast, Pandora Podcast, YouTube Music, formerly Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and we're available on Apple. You can contact us at the Common Sense Party Pod at gmail.com. We're available on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. Check us out on TikTok. We have some great stuff that's getting a lot of views, even as though by the right, but we still come and check us out. You can support via Cash App or Zelle. The information is on the About page of our podcast. So please, again, democracy needs consistency. And again, Joe, thank you so much. As the hat says, we are the Common Sense Party Podcast. And this episode is thank you, Joe, for your service.
Cool.